Go, do it. Sean, for those of you just joining us, which is all of you, you may notice that there is currently on the desk a half-eaten pumpkin roll. That's because we made our culminating moment of this DigInterp Indepth, the eating of the pumpkin roll, at which time we realized that you weren't seeing any of our video. So we have a half-eaten pumpkin roll now that maybe we'll finish off by the end of this, who knows. So this is our second take of DigInterp Indepth. Thank you for joining us here. We're going to be talking about 3D printing and scanning and all sorts of whoa, fun stuff today. Yeah, thanks, John. Oh, speaking of which, we have to do the Radio Lab thing that you thought was so hilarious last time.
Well, we have.
So we've got a guest here with us. In fact, they can't see it because you need to.
Yeah,
we've got pumpkin roll. There we go.
No.
There. Yep. Oh, no.
Oh golly. We need to 3D print a better mouth for that.
Are you trying to completely replicate last time, John? Let me. There you go. Let the techie do it. Yeah. Okay. So we have a guest with us today.
Hi.
Michelle Hammer.
Hi, Michelle Hammer. I work in the museum management program at Harpers Ferry National Historical Park. Here, Harpers Ferry.
Yes, we are in your park. We are always in your park, and we want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
And of course, I'm John Rudy with the Interpretive Development Program.
And I'm John Tobias with Harpers Ferry Center.
Stay with us. That's how they do it in a Radio Lab, but we don't have any sponsors, so I guess we can just go straight into
Except
it.
for 3D printing.
Oh, yes. 3D printing. So we want to talk to you about some really cool stuff, some future. So John, now hopefully the cameraman is actually working. You can click over on the slide. Hey!
Now wait, let's see if it actually works for you guys at home
Well,
in about 3 minutes.
All right.
Go for it, John.
Yes. So this DigInterp Indepth, we're going to be talking about, well, using our imaginations. And this is for those of you that saw Tomorrowland this past summer. Imagination is more important than knowledge. This is a quote that's carved into Bridgeway Plaza. Great movie. I'm probably the only person that knows that's the name of that set, Bridgeway Plaza. But imagination is more important than knowledge. It's actually an Albert Einstein quote.
You said that last time too.
I know I did. I'm like a wind-up doll. You just drop a coin in. So one of the things that we talk about is interpretive futurism. And this is something really cool. We actually have a futurist on staff with the National Park Service now. So Allison Druin from University of Maryland is now working with the Park Service. I can never remember Allison's actual title.
Chief Futurist of the University of Maryland.
Yeah, well, no, I mean for the Park Service, but
Special Advisor for Digital Strategy and all things else.
Yeah, can we just call her the Chief Futurist for the Park Service? How's that sound? That's what I'm going to call her. Allison is now the Chief Futurist for the National Park Service. Congratulations, Allison. No, but
she's the Chief Futurist of DigInterp.
She is. Yes. Interpretive futurism is really what we've been doing here in DigInterp all along. It's talking about how we can evolve forward, how we as a society can keep pushing forward. It's really about blue sky time. And it's something that I really appreciate is blue sky time, the time that you take intentionally to dream. And I dream quite often. And one of the people I dream with actually is sitting right next to me, John Tobias, and we like to throw ideas at the wall nonstop. And you know, I've got a limited amount of time because John is going to be joining you guys out there in the field. I know the clock's a little off now, isn't it? Because you know we should have been starting this like 1 o'clock.
Couple hours forward.
Anyways, so just over a month left before I'm going to lose John, and he's going to be out in the wild world of the National Park Service. We'll have to do this virtually, but blue sky time is really important, and I'm learning to really cherish it. And I think it's something that you should cherish and really try to set aside too. So part one from these last few in-person DigInterps that we're going to do, we're going to talk about physical futures, the future of physical, an experiment in 3D. We lost our props because you know, things happen. But anyways, I had a pair of 3D glasses. They look really cool, trust me. What is 3D printing? Well, 3D printing It's straightforward. Just think about it. It's printing in 3D, not just flat, but up into the actual world as well. 3D printing is three-dimensional printing, but it's really not the best name for it. In fact, it's probably a bad name for it. A better name might be rapid prototyping, making quick and consumable products very, very easily, very cheaply, making them so that you can use them. This is the plastic I've been using for printing is a PLA, which is actually polylactic acid. It's an offshoot. It's a byproduct of corn syrup. So actually, this is biodegradable eventually. It's also recyclable. It's a class 7 recyclable. So these objects can be printed very quickly and used. They can also be printed very cheaply. Just a couple dollars per print gets you these objects that you can afford to lose.
Or let children handle.
Right.
Eat up.
So I want to imagine the future. I want to imagine the cameraman flipping back over to where he's supposed to. There we go, John. I want to imagine the future.
He's getting punchy, folks.
I am getting punchy. Imagining the future, and I've got 4 ways we're going to imagine the future. The first one, number 1, is accessibility and tangibility. So I want there we go. Okay, is accessibility and tangibility. So this one, you've got the tools right in front of you to try this out. I want you to take your eyes, take the tools right there on the front of your face, and do one simple thing with them. Close them. Close your eyes, and now try to imagine the most important thing inside of your resource, inside of your special place, your park. Try to imagine it, and now try to imagine it and how you could experience it if you were blind, if you were visually impaired. What would it be like? How would you do that? How would you find that amazing thing? Well, this might be one of the answers. Imagine a blind or visually impaired visitor comes into your park. Let's say that park is Arches in Utah. And you say, okay, it's not going to be as good as if you had eyes, but I want to try to help. I want to try to help you see this place. So you hand them, well, this, a 3D printed arch. And you say, you know, it only cost about $1 to make this. Here, take this with you. You got your friend with you. Drive out to the arch, and when you get there, have your friend line it up in your hands, and then you can feel what you could be seeing. You can feel the real. So even though you can't see it, you can still see it with your hands. And you know what? Don't even worry about coming back to the visitor center. Just take it home with you. That could be an amazingly powerful moment for that blind person, for that visually impaired person. It could be an amazingly powerful moment, not only for them, but for their friends at home. When they take this back like a photograph, but here's an actual photograph that they can share with other blind friends, other visually impaired friends, to help them to see what they saw when they were in Utah. This print, by the way, this print of Delicate Arch, see, I'm learning the natural stuff. This print of Delicate Arch actually was made by a visitor to the park. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Number 2, the second way that I want you to think about this is the Lazarus experiment. And this is about reconstruction. This is about recreating. I'm a history geek, not a trees geek. So I'm dealing with the dead people. And oftentimes what's left over from the dead people, the houses, the structures are gone. They're just obliterated from the landscape. But I want to know what they look like. Here in Harpers Ferry, actually I work inside one of them. The building we're in, Mather Training Center, used to be Anthony Hall Historic College, and before it was Anthony Hall, it was actually the Armory Superintendent's house here in the 1850s. But we don't know exactly what it looked like because the building's been modified so many different times. How many pictures exist of your house? None, right? I mean, 1, 2, maybe in a real estate listing from a long time ago. But if you had to reconstruct your house from scratch right now, it might be tough to find pictures of every different angle. But if you looked in the background, every picture of your dog from the backyard, every picture of your kids getting on the school bus, every picture of the pumpkins on the front porch, you're going to be able to start putting the house together. When the Civil War comes around, there's lots and lots of pictures. And yeah, there's cool marching soldiers in the front, but look there in the background. You can start to see the little bits and pieces of this building come together. So what I did was I took a tour around the building virtually through about 30 different pictures and came up with a three-dimensional model of exactly what the building looked like in 1862. This is not supposition. This is actually built off of the historical evidence. And from that, then, I printed a model of the building right there. This is one of those opportunities you can go out in the landscape, hold this up, and go, that's what it looked like. You line up the corners just perfectly. You stand there, and without spending thousands upon thousands of dollars on bricks, I can rebuild a building on the landscape and hold it in the palm of my hand. That's an amazingly powerful thing. And especially it's powerful to hand this around to visitors and have them hold it in their hands and line it up perfectly.
And as a people, and many of you have been to this place before, you have no clue that this was this building or what. Where are we actually sitting, John?
Right, we're actually sitting right here in midair.
I put my hands up.
Yeah, we were screaming and falling because we're in midair, right about there. So the room we're in didn't exist at the time of the Civil War, but it was floating right above where the slaves were cooking and cleaning and living.
It's kind of like this building as well, right? The top piece wasn't here when John Brown raided the building.
Exactly.
And so nobody knows that. Everybody's like, oh, what?
So we can use this type of technology to reconstruct lost pieces. We can use it to reconstruct actual pieces. This is based off of the Habs and Hare drawings of John Brown's fort. So this is an exact model reproduction of the fort down to the closest inch in HO scale. So it's model train scale.
Which is great, right? So people could take your models and not only print them out for their own use, but print them out so they can use with other things they have at their house. Like you can print this to Lego scale. You can print it to HO scale. You can print it just to any scale you want at your house, Woody scale.
And then you've also got reproductions of physical landscapes as well. This is
changing.
This is a changing landscape. It's Mount St. Helens before and after the eruption. So you can get an opportunity of seeing exactly how that landscape shifted and changed over the course of just a few minutes.
So it's the same thing as this physical piece. You can do it with the natural piece as well.
Right.
Just like there's even arches where parts of them have fallen. You can put it back together and show people what it looks like.
Number 3. Now we're getting into the wild and the woolly.
We talked about it a little bit.
The remix effect is really important. The remix effect is well, the best example of it is Smithsonian. The Smithsonian has scanned a bunch of their objects. They're scanning more and more daily. One of the earliest ones they scanned was actually Abraham Lincoln's life mask by Mills. And this mask has been remixed and shifted by tons of users. They download it and they do fun stuff with it. I've seen Abraham Lincoln action figures. I've seen Abraham Lincoln Pez dispensers, but my favorite one is actually the Abraham Lincoln beaded necklace. It's like Mardi Gras beads with Abraham Lincoln's face on it. This is someone that took the model, drove a hole through the model virtually, and then printed out dozens and dozens of them. And isn't that love? Isn't that care? Isn't that appreciation for the resource? They care about Lincoln enough to print off dozens and dozens of little tiny copies of his head, string them on a necklace, and wear it out to a party. It's a fascinating thing.
I say we take up a collection plate for John to get one of these.
Well,
So
I've got
if
the
anybody
printer.
has it on the comments, we can get John one.
I can print this off.
Oh, just print it for yourself.
I will print it for myself. Next time on DigiInterp, I will be wearing an Abraham Lincoln beaded necklace, like Mardi Gras beads.
I'd like one for my zipper.
And John wants a zipper dongle. This is the big question. What might they do? And the they in this case is the visitors, the non-visitors, the virtual visitors, the digital visitors, the citizens, whatever you want to call them. What might they do? And there's 2 ways to answer this question. There's 2 ways that I see out there. There's the one that's shock and fear. Oh my God, what might they do? And then there's the one of joy and wonder. Oh my God, what might they do? Sometimes I hear a lot of that first one and not that much of the second one. I want to encourage you out there to start trying to push beyond that first one of fear and shock and push to the joy and wonder. Don't worry so much. And just let people enjoy and be fascinated by these resources. They love them so much. They want to make a necklace out of Abraham Lincoln, if you'll only let them. Number 4, true citizen ownership. This one is fascinating. There's a lot of things. If you go to Thingiverse, which is a social network and online catalog of 3D objects, if you search for national park, you bring up a bunch of stuff. This is my absolute favorite. It's a 3D model that someone made of Fort Jefferson and Dry Tortugas. And this is the description they wrote of it. I want to read it out loud. I created Dry Tortugas National Park, the most isolated national park in the United States, also the most remote island in the Florida Keys. I used Tinkercad to create this park. It took me a day and a half to create it. I kept on messing up because this is one of the first designs I created on Tinkercad. I started by placing a hexagon for Fort Jefferson, which is unfinished. Construction for the fort began in 1847. While creating this, I was feeling stressed and kept messing up. I kept feeling it didn't look good enough, but I reminded myself that everything has flaws, even the real landmark. I added textures along with the land that surrounded the fort. It started to look more like the Dry Tortugas. It's still not completely perfect, but the most beautiful art has plenty of mistakes, but it ends up fine. I kept on fixing the walls in the fort to make it look more like it had been when I had seen it. I'd been there, and it's a beautiful place. I feel kind of mad that I couldn't really add anything inside the fort, or it would have disappeared. However, when I visited the park, the outside was just as beautiful as the inside. Since I couldn't add anything inside, I tried to make the outside as beautiful as possible. It turned out just the way I had planned. To see the Tinkercad file, follow the link below. There's a picture of what they created. And yes, it's not the most perfect image of the fort. And yes, it's basic, but it shows love. It shows appreciation. It shows exactly what we want from our visitors. Isn't this the ultimate expression of care of the resource? They get home and they say, I love that place so much, I need to recreate it. I need to rebuild it. I need it to be on my shelf. And now I can. Tinkercad, the software they used for this, tinkercad.com, it's totally free. You guys can go out and play with it tomorrow. It's what I use to create the historic structures that you see dotting around the table here. There's tons of these people out there that are scanning things and recreating things because they love them. There's a Barker Dam inscription from a dam within the national parks. There's the Gateway Arch. Someone had actually recreated the entire Gateway Arch. This is just the keystone, the visitation room at the top, but you can actually print out the whole thing. Here's someone that scanned Lassen Volcanic National Park, printed Lassen Volcanic National Park, and returned it to Lassen Volcanic National Park. They had to bring their piece of art back into the park that it represented. And Roosevelt Arch at Yellowstone, which was actually made by Shakespeare. I love that name, Shakespeare. This is one of the main entryways, one of the original historic main entryways to Yellowstone, with the cornerstone that was laid by Teddy Roosevelt. He walked around this thing with a hand scanner and scanned the entire building, the entire structure, and then put it out there for everybody else to print.
So cool.
It's and Shakespeare, if you go over to Thingiverse, has tons and tons of Yellowstone and Yosemite scans. So the hashtag #FindYourPark has been really popular within the Park Service, and I'm going to break a cardinal rule now.
Don't tell Amber.
Don't tell Amber. Amber, just turn off your streams now. It's not hashtag #FindYourPark. It's really something even bigger, something more powerful. It's own your park. And that's what this type of technology allows us to get to. It allows visitors and citizens to own the parks, to have them on their shelves whenever they need them. So I want to encourage you to experiment in 3D. I want you to set aside some blue sky time and dream. I want you to take chances. I want you to make mistakes. I want you to get messy. Those 3 mantras that Ms. Frizzle gave us on the Magic School Bus. And remember that imagination is more important than knowledge. You know, Albert Einstein was intelligent there. I don't think anyone can accuse Albert Einstein of being a dummy. Well, okay, maybe Stephen Hawking, but nobody else can call Einstein a dummy. Imagination is more important than knowledge, and it's not what you know, it's what you dream that really matters. And this is a technology that allows us to really dream. John's going to actually help us to figure out where we can take these dreams and how we can make these dreams practical. You know, I'm the weird dreamer, and John is usually the more practical, down to earth person.
So with the magic of swivel chairs, we will switch positions. The technology we have. So I'm just going to talk quickly. You know, how can you do this without having to, you know, plop down $10,000, right? Now I'll tell you right now, when we talk to Michelle in a second, that's not how much you'd put down just to even do some basic things. But there's some easy methods. There's people in your community that have access to not only scanners, 3D printers, and also just people that have an interest in this, right? I mean, one big part of this is also you need to kind of have an idea of what, you know, how to even do some of this. Now, it's pretty easy, you know, to get in, to jump in with 2 feet and try some of these things, to make things in 3D. You know, John, after I came over and opened up Tinkercad in front of him and made a quick find your park thing, you know, the next day he had a John Brown's fort, and the next day he had rebuilt it 3 more times, and the next day he had perfected it.
Right. This is all created out of basic geometric shapes. Nothing more than squares and circles and triangles.
Yeah. And so one of the biggest things, though, is how do we print it? How do we talk to other people? There are so many people in your communities right now that have places that have 3D printers and scanners. We'll talk about if you wanted to buy one in a minute, but just to get your feet wet so you buy the right thing. And because what we're going to show you today in some ways is going to be old by the time you're ready to buy one, you need to talk to some other people. So there are maker spaces. Here's just, we looked it up recently. You know, this is a maker space in Baltimore, really close to us. There's maker spaces right around Harper's Ferry. There's one down in Rockville and other places.
Almost every major and minor city in America
metropolitan has it. Another maker space, though, that most people don't realize, this is the library. Libraries, schools, middle schools, elementary schools, and high schools have STEM labs now. What is the center point for most of these STEM labs? A 3D printer. A lot of times 3D printer and a 3D scanner. Now, they might not be the best, but we don't also have the best sitting around us, right? We have ones, and this one's amazing, and so is the other one we have. I mean, they print really nice stuff for handing out. But what's the, you know, the quality levels and things like that? But this STEM lab I know just locally has 3 or 4 3D printers just inside of it, sitting there waiting, so you can go play with them.
And this is your local public library?
This is my local public library. It's nothing special. And they got a grant. One other way you can get these things is through grants. There's a lot of people giving STEM grants right now. You can work it into your programs. The other place, of course, that has great assets are universities. This is the University of Maryland's brand new 3D printing lab. It's a MakerBot lab. It's full of, how many, you did count last time?
Yeah, it's 34.
34 just in the picture. It looks like there might be 2 more or 3 more, probably a whole nother rack of shelves of 3D printers just sitting there. A lot of times universities will let us come in and print with them. We could ask them to build these little guys, to build these little models for us and print them. You know, I mean, there's lots of people that need experience building 3D in these places. There's no reason why they should keep scanning the school library, right? Or the school, the dorm room. Why not come and scan something like John Brown's fort?
Creating formal and informal partnerships might be amazing ways to get this type of work done.
And, you know, they have a lot of experience in it, and they're the ones right on the cutting edge of it. Like the other side of it is at a place like the University of Maryland or most large universities and probably small community colleges, they have, you know, the $10,000 printer. They have a $100,000 printer. They have a they have a $200,000 printer.
All the printers in this image aren't those all MakerBots? I think?
No, I'm saying these are MakerBots.
Right. And these are pretty good printers. These are pretty good. These are a step above the stuff that we've got in the room here.
2,500.
Yeah.
But when you step up to another one, then you can make, like at Nike, they can make shoes with a printer that you can actually just take off the printer and run with. So you have to think, you know, and at GE, they're building metal jet nozzles that are 3D printed, right? That you can't make any other way. So as you step up, the printer might be more expensive, but in reality, the materials and time to print something like that isn't that much. So your other option on top of that is to go for a third-party place. This is Shapeways.
There's tons and tons of these companies.
Holiday special right now, so that's why it's crazy on top. But they print in, you know, they have these $100,000 printers that you can just buy. when they're printing in plastic, they're printing in gold, they're printing in metals, stainless steel, they're printing in different sandstone, they're printing on all different types of plastics. And that gets you back to something else too to think about, is that there really are a ton of different kind of materials you can do, right? Even in the printers that, like behind us here, you can print in PLA, like John was talking about, which is from a corn base. You can print in ABS, which is what our Legos are made of, like
so
this.
you've got a piece of that right here.
An ABS test, so it feels like a Lego on the outside, you know. And then there are different ways to finish it. There are wood ones, wood-based ones where you can sand it. Of course, there's metals, there's wax release, there's lasering ones.
There's tons of companies now coming out with filament that are mixed, things like PLA with byproducts, the grain byproducts from beer and coffee grounds, so that they're really sustainable.
Yeah. Now, one thing about sustainable, just so everybody knows, sustainable also means if you put it outside, it can melt.
Right.
So be careful with.
So sustainable means consumable too.
Consumable. So just be careful of that one. It's not a permanence thing. Like an ABS print, you could probably put outside as long as there's no holes that water can get into. This should last pretty well outside.
Kind of like leaving a Lego brick outside for a couple decades.
It's gonna just, if it's not too bad, too hot, it'll be perfect. One really. Another thing too that actually we didn't talk about last time was finishing too. A lot of people do finish, color, spray paint, and also you can do things like like acetone, fogging, and things like that. That gets rid of the textures that end up on these things, and it smooths them out. So it's things to think about when you're doing finishing on these.
But again, this is the type of expertise that going to a local makerspace, and going to the folks that are the hobbyists of Olympic caliber do constantly. For instance, we didn't show this either, and John's going to be happy that I'm showing it. I went to a mini maker fair while I was in Louisville, Kentucky for a conference, for a history conference, the AASLH, and they had a mini maker fair going on just down the street. And I got myself scanned, actually by some of those enthusiasts of Olympic caliber, and then I printed myself on a 3D printer. So that is a 3D printed selfie in all of my bulbousness.
So you can have your own John Rudy.
Yeah, and
all of us can have one on our desk.
If someone is really interested in printing out a John Rudy action figure to have on your desk, let me know. I have the files. I don't know why you want one. It's kind of stupid.
So we can read.
I'll send one out west with you, John. So yes, it's a really cool technology, but those are the folks to tap.
So the other big thing with this, of course, is scanning, which we're going to talk about here in a second. But scanning is a massive, the other half of this, right? So you can build things in 3D and print them, like the buildings that John has, things like that. But scanning the real thing, or using scans, like, I mean, even this of Mount St. Helens is a laser scan, right? Or reconstruction from photo. But it's using lasers from space, or photos,
right.
Space, LiDAR from space to scan this. So to make almost anything, you want to be able to scan it. To start with anything that you want to be like a realistic recreation object, you want to scan it.
And we've been using GIS data and experimenting with making maps of parks, tactile maps of parks that you can print out and pop out right there too. And it's really dead simple.
It's really cool too.
It's cool, and it's so easy that you can do it in 10 minutes. It's not that hard. And if any of you want to know exactly how to do that, let us know, and we can walk you through it in this 10 minutes on the phone
too. Or we can do a quick demo.
We may do a quick demo at some point. So it's a really, really cool system. But scanning, you mentioned scanning, and Harper's Ferry has been doing some amazing work with scanning. So actually, why don't we scoot over?
Yeah.
We'll add to the Diginter pumpkin roll, it still says down here.
Pumpkin.
So Michelle, you're with curatorial here.
Yeah, museum management curatorial.
And you guys got both a 3D printer and a 3D scanner.
Right.
So what are you scanning?
So first thing we wanted or had the mind to scan was our artifacts and our resources, like a monument out in the park. So more. We wanted to better document our collection. That was the general idea, and do that alongside the public. So I knew when we were looking at the technology, we wanted to document with the public using a technology, or I should say a level of 3D technology that's accessible to them at their price point. So we chose the Cube and the Cubify software, because it finishes rather quickly. You've got a different model. And it's engaging, it's easy to start a print. We have the public engage with starting the prints and the scanning process. We've done a few programs outside, so
you bought consumer level printing and scanning equipment because you figured that's what folks might have in their house eventually too.
Yeah, and that helped us, and I think we're going to get to how to design your exhibit or your space to meet that need of the public wanting to capture 3D data. So now that they have these tools at their hand, and it's free or it's really cheap, we're starting to think about how we can better make exhibit space or access to artifacts for that audience, so that they can then like come in and scan my artifact. It's just as easy as saying, I won't put a back wall on that case. I'll make it
so I can walk around the whole thing.
Or I won't even put, I won't put it in a case if it's a, bust or something. I'll allow people to hack my museum, and this is popular in a lot of the big museums, but these are things we should be thinking about. Instead of having to do it all ourselves, let them have access, better access.
The Scan the World project is a large project where people have been actually going into art museums and scanning pieces of art, and they're using just their phones with the 1, 2, 3D catch, 1, 2, 3D catch.
It's all
app.
AutoCAD.
And it's a free app, and it works wonderfully, and it allows you to walk around something and actually take pictures.
Yeah, so if you're thinking about bringing it into your park, the first thing we can go to policy. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Just a little bit, yeah.
Okay,
A little bit.
so show the policy.
Why is there a policy?
Well, first there's always a policy.
What did Harvest Ferry want to print
There's
first?
always policy. The first thing, of course, we wanted to print was gun parts, because we made gun parts in Harper's Ferry, and the industry was innovated. There was innovations that we were milling. We were doing, additive manufacturing. So we want to replicate that with a modern process and interpret that. So in addition to the museum policy, which is any 3D reproduction needs to be approved individually by your superintendent.
Which is your local policy.
It's our local policy. Well, no, that's museum handbook for those of you who need it. So then we knew that there was an issue in the press with maybe gun parts being printed being an issue. So we went to law enforcement and we had a conversation, and they of course advised that we just don't make a fireable gun or a fireable weapon, but it's good to let communicate within your park, see what people are comfortable with. And just make sure everyone's aware of how you're approaching scanning and printing, and how you're, representing the park to the public. So that's the
basis. Just check your local rules. Check, talk about it with the superintendent. Don't just go buy it and start printing stuff and start scanning things in the museum and not tell the people in collections, or the collections people not go start scanning and not talk to the superintendent or law enforcement about some of the issues that might occur. So you have to develop some policy. I mean, eventually my guess is there'll be some policy built around it, but right now, we're on the cutting edge. I'm sure we'll get Michelle assigned to some council to do this, but that's this is how things start.
So you've been doing this with visitors coming up too, and actually printing with them.
Yeah, so we're, in addition to scanning the artifacts, and I should note that they almost always want us to scan them. So try to predict the fact that now we need to sign a release when we're taking photos of folks in the park. Well, I think scanning visitors, scanning ethnographic study subjects, scanning, as a form of documentation is coming. So just think about that. But yeah, you mean the program, like how does it go? So we bring out our printer, we bring out our scanner, and we allow folks to pick which object we should scan. I actually have them scanning. I give them the scanner and they get to scan the object, and we see if they can do it, and they usually can. And they're really excited because even though you may have heard about 3D printing and it may be in your community, every single person that has come to our booth, hundreds, has said they've never seen it. So it is still a novelty, and that makes it engaging. And then we work in sort of the resource information about the collection and how we're using it to share the study collection and with other. How we can, and think Smithsonian, how you can share. Let's say you have a bone collection, I can now scan all my bones and share that as a study collection. The parks have we have huge number of resources. So now we can actually live share that live as we're working with it in the lab, and that's just really exciting.
Which means one of the examples that we were using a couple weeks ago with some local school kids was bricks.
Yeah.
And we could scan a brick here in Harpers Ferry, and you could compare it to a brick that was produced by someone in Ohio, simply by emailing out the file and having them printed out there, and they can hold the two in their hands and really compare them, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and these files are smaller than high-res photos. And I might send you the brick with a high-res photo and a 2D drawing and a physical description or catalog record, but you will get more out of the scan, and it's less space. It's actually conservation.
Yeah. Can you show us how to scan something?
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Why don't we? Can we scan George Washington?
Let's
scan George Washington.
He doesn't mind. He doesn't mind.
Okay.
So excuse the camera,
Yes.
and John will talk with his hands.
And yeah, I talk with my hands, so I apologize.
Get to it.
So there's George Washington. Actually, while Michelle is getting the scanner set up, the reason we're scanning George Washington is he is coming up here to Mather. He is coming back home. This bust of George Washington was here when this was Storer College. It was actually purchased by some of the students here as a memorial for Inez Saunders. She was a wife of one of the professors and also a local school teacher. She was African American and was head of the local school teachers union. So this is a great little piece of both women's history and African American history that's coming home to Harpers Ferry and back onto public display. But Michelle, our building's not open 24/7, 365, and you want to make sure that visitors are able to see George whenever they want. So that's why we're going to 3D scan
take him home.
Yes.
And remix him. So just for all of you process-oriented people like me, get your workflow sorted. Once you pick your product, this is an easy one because it's all free software with Cubify. Once you pick your product, then you set up a workflow that'll work out in the public program and in the lab, or just, whatever. Make sure you sort that out before you try to bring it to the public, at least. So this is the Sense scanner that comes with it's Cubify again. The Cube printer is working behind me, but this is the scanner. It looks like a staple gun. I think right after I bought this, they came out with one that's docked to an iPad. So now I believe it's about $300, and you could get one docked to an iPad.
And there's a lot of different scanners
there's a lot
as well,
of
not
it's
just
one.
This is just one.
One of them.
They have
So-
different resolutions and everything else.
So it's all, USB. I pick what am I scanning. We've done busts as people and as objects. I think they work better as an object because that's what it is. So it's giving me basically a laser image.
Would you like me to hold the laptop?
Yeah, we do hold the laptop. That would help. So this is using a laser to capture like hundreds and hundreds of little points. And the way I scan it is, go ahead. I look at the screen because what I'm focused on is a capture. So you have to kind of have control of yourself. Make sure that you get the image, get the objects, all points on the object. So you kind of walk around it and move around it. If I was doing photogrammetry with the AutoCAD, the 1, 2, 3D catch, I would just be doing the same thing, but taking like 100 pictures. If you lose tracking, that means the lasers aren't finding the right points. It's lost your object. So basically, you can see how much detail I'm able to capture, which if I were drawing it, I could do side 1, side 2, side 3. But if I'm scanning it, it just, all that white space is where it needs data, it needs more points. So once you're done the scan, it converts this into layers and a STL file, which can be read by any printer, and it prints the layers, basically.
Which means that we could email this off to somebody in California, and they could have George Washington sitting on their desk in maybe a couple hours worth of printing.
Or if you're in a lab, I can give you my bone. Or I can get you a piece of prehistoric ceramic with an unusual finish. Some of these things that are really hard to capture in photos are what's really exciting, I think.
I think we're going to be almost done.
Yeah, he's pretty good. Oop, he's good.
We're good?
Yeah.
All right. So that's going to process, and actually, through the magic of television, if John switches over, we can see what a 3D scan of George looks like. There you go. that is George Washington as he's sitting right here, waiting to be printed. In just a couple hours, we could have him sitting here on the desk with us, which is an amazing thing. You can take that George, that's a really meaningful George Washington, and take this object and then turn it into something real that you can take with you, that you can put in your hand. So it's a story of Inez Saunders that you can keep in your pocket, which is an amazing new revolution of interpretive meaning when you can take the meaning with you. It's ownership of the park. It's really kind of cool.
Customized meaning.
Yeah. So this has been really cool.
Yeah.
I really appreciate what you guys are doing here in the park. Michelle, come in with George. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing here in the park, and that you guys have broken ground. You, the Chief of Interpretation, Dennis Fry, and Autumn Cook, who does the digital outreach in the park. You guys have really broken some cool ground here, and thank you for breaking the ground. And it's going to be exciting to see what happens next. And we want to see what happens with you guys next too when you go out blue sky dreaming. So thank you for joining us here on DigInterp. We're going to dig into our what's left of our pumpkin roll over there. John, you come in and do a selfie arm or something.
Because I have an extra long arm.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, you got extra long arms there. Okay, so thank you guys for joining us here. We're gonna dig back into our pumpkin roll. You have a great, well, probably you're watching this after Thanksgiving, so have a great after Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next time from up here at Mather Training Center. Stay healthy, stay safe, and keep interpreting. Have a good one.
Thanks. Let's see how many people we can get to watch it though before we come back to Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. See you guys. Have a good one.
Yeah. Now, can I scan you guys?